Hey everyone, welcome to our breakout session hosted by Y Combinator. We are super excited to have you join us today. Our speaker today is Kat, who is the head of outreach at Y Combinator. For those of you not familiar with Y Combinator funds and supports hundreds of startups every year. Kat has been at Y Combinator since 2013 and has seen over 3,000 companies go through the program. So Kat has a wealth of knowledge and ready to share with you today. Previously, Kat was the chief of staff to Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit and investor. Prior to that, she was at Wired Magazine. She graduated from Northeastern and grew up in the Bay Area, where she is joining us today. Please join me in welcoming Kat. She's talking about perfect your pitch. So we're going to get a ton of great insights today. And so, Kat, I am going to turn it over to you. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen. But hello, and I'm delighted to see that where you're all coming from. So keep putting in that in the chat. All right, I'm going to open up a quick presentation. And so before we get started, I'd love to learn a little bit more about all of you. So how many of you are interested in starting your own startup? Can you press 1 in the chat? How many of you are interested in working at a startup? Press 2, sorry. And then how many of you are interested in just getting a job generally? Just like not necessarily at a startup, just anywhere. Okay. And so how many of you are already working on a startup right now? Press 4. All right. That's great. That's really helpful. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Kat Manyalik. I'm head of outreach at YC, and it's really, really nice to meet you all. I'm excited to be here today. Before we jump into talking about pitching and pitching yourself, I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll share some questions I'd love to know about all of you. We'll have some time later where, some of you, if you're interested in doing sort of like a live pitch workshop, we can do that. So after that, I'll jump into what makes a good pitch and how to practice. And then we'll go into a Q&A. All right. So as I said, I'm Kat. I'm the head of outreach at Y Combinator, and I've been at YC for over 10 years now, which is incredible. YC funds startups, and we help them as they grow. We get to know the founders pretty much from the very beginning, when it's just, often when it's just 2 founders and an idea. And we've worked now with over 4,500 companies, some of whom you might recognize, like Twitch, Reddit, Airbnb, Dropbox. We've been called a school for startups. And like a university, we get thousands of applications every year, every 6 months. We interview the applicants, we fund the teams, and we end up funding about 500 or so startups every year. So at YC, I personally get to work on 2 things. One, my team helps create resources for future founders. So any of the YouTube videos you see, the library resources, social media, that kind of thing. And second, I help founders in the batch figure out how best to tell their stories. How, they end up pitching themselves to press and eventually investors. And I've helped, hundreds, if not thousands, if not potentially like over 1,000 founders do this. So hopefully today I can share some of what I tell founders to help you create elevator pitches for yourselves, or even your startups. All right. So why learn to pitch? Why is it a useful skill? So this might sound obvious, but as you go out into the world, you're going to have to pitch yourself over and over again, basically for the rest of your life. So you've already had to pitch yourself to admissions people to get into college. You might have already pitched yourself to potential employers to get internships or even a job. You have to pitch yourself online. You have to set up, a LinkedIn profile, other social media profiles. And if you're thinking about starting a startup, or you already have, you'll need to pitch to investors and eventually customers. So here, I would love, before we dive into pitching, I'd love to learn a little bit about you. So here's what I'd love to know. First, your name. Second is your favorite hobby or thing to do currently. If you had to choose one thing, what would you say you're best at? And then do you have a specific career goal, or is there a problem or challenge you're particularly interested in solving? It can be something as big as helping solve climate change issues, or it can be, you might want to solve a particular problem that you've seen in your own life or at school. And then finally, is there anything in particular you want to learn here at EES? So while you take some time to sort of think about your responses to those questions and to maybe draft them, to write them down, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I started doing what I'm doing. So I'll give you a little bit of background. So after college, I worked at Wired magazine. And at that time, Wired was really focused on finding and reporting on what's next, what the future had in store for us, and how the internet was impacting our culture. So while I was there, companies like Airbnb and Kickstarter had just gotten started, and I met those founders, and they are basically what made me fall in love with startups. All the startup founders I met were these passionate people who wanted to build these like world-changing platforms. They were super ambitious and fast-moving, and it felt really exciting compared to something like media, which was and still is pretty old school, a little bit slow-moving. So while I was at Wired, I worked out of the same office as the early Reddit team. And so back then, Reddit was just 5 people. And I became friends with, the founders, Alexis and Steve. So Alexis is now perhaps more famously even known as the husband to tennis's Serena Williams. But I got to know Alexis, and you sort of trade startup ideas. And so after I'd been at Wired for about 4 years, I asked him, what do you think I should do? As you start to meet more startup founders, you realize they become startup pushers. And it's because starting a startup really changed their life so significantly that they want you to have the same experience. So he said, if you're not ready to start your own startup, I would highly recommend you join a startup. You work at a startup to really figure out if this is something you want to do with your life. So he introduced me to a bunch of founders. I started interviewing at a bunch of companies, and midway through that process, he said, wait, why don't you work with me? I'm starting, he had an angel fund. He was about to start a VC fund. He had a nonprofit, and he's like, just come on board with me. And from him, I learned how to help early stage startups launch and grow. He's one of the best online community builders out there on the internet. Reddit is, I think, one of the top 10 sites in the world. And so that's how I got into what I'm doing now. And eventually he introduced me to Paul and Jessica, which is how I landed where I am today. All right. So taking a step back, I didn't have a specific goal in mind, but what I was thinking through when I was deciding what opportunities I wanted to pursue was, what am I excited to learn? What problems do I want to help solve? And who do I want to learn from? So this is actually a quote from Sam Altman's Twitter. He has a good essay called "How to Be Successful." It's an essay on his blog, and he also has a long tweet thread. And in it, he talks about looking for the intersection of what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what way you can create value for the world. So in short, he recommends looking for, thinking really honestly about what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what people will pay for. So this is sort of the loose framework that I've always figured, I've used to figure out what it was that I wanted to do next. Awesome, Michael. I also love Reddit and still am a daily user. All right. So why is thinking through these questions important before you start pitching yourself? With startups, we say before you pitch anyone, investors, press, customers, it's important to be able to clearly and succinctly describe what it is you do. So before anyone can invest in you or help in you, they have to understand what it is they're doing, what it is you're doing, and have a clear call to action for how they can help. So in the case of a personal pitch, it's important to have clarity around what you want. And so people, you reach out to really understand like how they can help you. Because if they, read a short email and it's just like, hey, can we meet for coffee? That's too vague. All right. So again, here are the questions. Names, easy. If, favorite hobby or thing to do, 3, if you had to choose just one thing, what are you best at? I ask this one because pitching yourself confidently can be a little uncomfortable. And I even find this question awkward to answer. But it's important to be comfortable talking about what you're good at. And then the questions around, specific career goals. Yes, I will ask anyone if they want to come on stage and sort of share their short pitch, and we can do a live workshop toward the end. We'll let you know, and you can raise your hand at that moment. All right, so the pitch. Let's jump into it. At YC, we work with founders really closely for 3 months to get their companies in the best shape possible. And at the end of the program, we have a demo day. So founders get on stage and they have just 1 minute to introduce themselves and their companies to investors. Just 1 minute. It's pretty crazy. If you're a founder presenting and after your presentation, you walk into the audience and ask a random investor what they remember about your pitch, they'll remember 2, maybe 3, if you're lucky, details from your presentation tops. So we work with founders so that they can deliver a great, memorable pitch. And some of what we help founders do is super applicable to you as you apply for jobs, as you start talking to people at career fairs, or even as you're presenting projects in class. So let's talk about the elements of a good pitch. First, great pitches are concise. This goes for startup pitches and personal pitches. So as you know, these are called elevator pitches because they should be short enough to communicate in an elevator. You have, our founders at Demo Day have 1 minute to get people interested in what they're building. And that's just the beginning of a conversation, right? Hopefully someone is interested and shares their contact information with you, and you can continue the conversation later. But in that first moment, you might only have 30 seconds. So it's good to be as clear and concise as possible. If you're talking to potential employers at a career fair, for example, they're talking to tens, if not hundreds of candidates. So be as clear and concise as possible because they, so that whatever you say can be really jogged into their memory. Next, your short pitch should cover 3 things, and the first 2 should help give your listener context. So you'll talk about who you are and what you do. So I could say, hi, I'm Kat. I'm at Y Combinator. We invest in startups and help them as they grow. 1 second, sorry. And before you, write this line for yourself, it may be worth thinking about what are you excited to learn, what problems do you want to help solve, and who do you want to learn from? So my fictional student, Lena Francisco, could say, hi, I'm Lena. I'm a junior at UCLA. I'm interested in starting a company one day that helps combat climate change. The third thing your short pitch should cover is a call to action. So tell us what you want or how we can be helpful to you. So the 3 elements of a pitch: who you are, what you do, and what you want. So make sure not to drop the what you want factor. So I know how to help you. So I could say, hi, I'm Kat. I'm at Y Combinator. We fund startups and help them as they grow. And I'm here today to get you to think about one day starting your own company. And my fictional Lena Francisco might say something like, I'm Lena Francisco, a junior at UCLA. I'm interested in starting a company one day that helps combat climate change. And I'd love to talk to you about an internship at your climate tech company. All right. The next tips are really about, delivery. And so I'd say keep things really conversational. Depending on who you're talking to, pitching yourself or, asking for what you want can be reasonably intimidating. It's important to practice so you can sound human and not too rehearsed. People love feeling like you're having a real conversation, and they want to, really understand the fact that you're a person, a human, and, not a robot who's just memorized a script. Second, confident delivery is probably half the battle. So make eye contact, shoulders back, don't speak too quickly. That's something a lot of our founders struggle with. One founder I know, she practices the Superwoman pose right before she has to go on stage to pitch anything, just so it helps her prepare. And it sounds silly, but do whatever you have to do to get comfortable. All right. And so really to sum it up, you'll want, your pitch to be concise, to give your listener context. You'll want a call to action, so people know how to help you. You want to deliver it in a conversational way that is very clear, and you'll want to, deliver it with confidence. And practice is really going to be the thing that helps you get there. So, our founders, we work with them, weeks before demo day to prepare this presentation, and they practice their presentation probably hundreds of times. And so one thing I would recommend you do is A/B test your pitch. So you can practice different versions of your pitch in front of friends, in front of family, in front of, mentors, and see what lands, see what sort of they react to. So how do you know you have a good pitch? So one clue is, do they have a clear sense for what you said? Can they repeat it back to you? So, one issue with a bad startup pitch is that it's really vague. See, I actually included one later here. I'm going to can you all hear me? I'm going to run to this really quickly. Here is an example of a bad startup pitch that is too vague. Indie Cloud is a know-how and synergy platform. I don't know what that means. It could be know-how and synergy could be something like Slack. It could be an edtech platform. It's way too vague. And so when you're describing what you do or what you want to do, someone should be able to paint a picture really quickly in their minds of what it is you do. And for example, this was Airbnb's actual pitch when they pitched YC, when they filled out the application, when they were first getting started. Airbnb is the first online marketplace that lets travelers book rooms with locals instead of hotels. You know who they are, you know who they're building it for, and sort of what problem they're solving. They're solving the problem for people who want to feel more like locals instead of tourists. And so we loved this because it was very clear what they were doing. I could easily paint a picture in my head of what you had to build. It sounded, it's an online marketplace. And so that definitely, made it easy for me to sort of, figure out what they were doing and how to help. Going back really quickly. Sorry, I'm jumping back a couple slides. So one other clue to figure out whether you have a good pitch is, are folks asking good follow-up questions? If you basically deliver your pitch to someone and they are just like, oh, that's nice, thanks. You probably aren't landing. And so I would keep practicing different versions of the pitch until people start asking really good follow-up questions. And for a personal pitch, that might be like, oh, you're interested in, solving climate change issues. Have you done any, sort of classes or, sort of projects while you've been in school that have sort of helped you go in that direction? Or how did you decide that you wanted to do that? And if folks aren't asking good follow-up questions, I would keep practicing or, kind of A/B test other options. All right. So is there anyone, I saw some folks who shared their short pitches in the chat. Is there anyone who wants to sort of try their pitch live? If so, raise your hand, and I believe we should be able to, we should be able to highlight you. And if no one wants to do this live, that's totally fine. I can read some of the ones that people shared in the chat as well. Let's see. Okay. Let me scroll. Okay, we have Vishwanath, playing chess and solving Rubik's cubes is favorite hobby. Was top 10 in the world for solving the Rubik's cube blindfolded. That's amazing. I enjoy finding new problems to solve and delve into the nitty-gritty details and help solve it using them tech. Okay, so I would say my one thought on that is that I'd love to have an even more clear sense of what kind of problems you like to solve, and how you can delve, because I could say, hey, I have a really a job or an internship that I think you would really enjoy, at X company, you should check them out because they're solving the particular problems that you're interested in. But I really think that that's like, I think that I'm compelled to know more about you as a person based on some of the information that you shared. I would just say be more specific about sort of your career goals or interests if you can be. Okay, so I think we have someone with their hands raised, so they're going to invite one up. All right. And thank you, by the way. All right, Jason.
Hey, Kat. Hi. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So do you want to give us your short pitch?
Definitely. Hi, I'm Jason. I'm a junior studying computer science at ASU. Um, I love karate. I'm a black belt at that. Love playing soccer, and I recently jumped out of a plane. With a parachute, of course. So, want to keep on doing that. In terms of something that I'm very passionate about is education. And since a younger age, tech in education is something that I wanted. And I would like to work with companies that are kind of disrupting education. And currently, AI is something that they're, using in education. So that is something, I would like to do.
I'm taking some notes. I think that was an incredible short pitch because in my mind, I have like 3 to 5 companies. One, for example, is called Study Education. It was in the last batch of YC. They're using AI to it's basically an AI math tutor for everyone, and they're starting with math, but they also have tools for language, and there's just so many interesting things happening in that space right now. And so
Right.
I have a very clear call to action for you. So it's like email me kat@ycombinator.com. I'm just going to put that in the chat. And if you said, what year are you?
I'm a junior, so year 3.
Yeah. So just shoot me an email and I can send you some suggestions for companies, early stage companies to look at, because I think that was a great sort of pitch, and it gives me a clear sense of how I can help. So yeah, Study Education is one of them, but I can send you a few more, after this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I understand this is a short thing, but is it fine if I can slip in a question? Is that
Yeah. Go
okay?
ahead. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Y Combinator has been something, I've been looking forward to, like at least, like looking up to, since a young age, like watching Sam Altman, when he started giving his lectures, him moving out of Y Combinator, the whole YouTube series on Y Combinator, etc. I myself am an international student, who came here to study, with the hopes of, uh, maybe having an entrepreneurial venture someday. And I wanted to kind of ask, does Y Combinator enable international students as well? Because I know myself, in terms of an Indian founder, Oyo is a company that y'all kind of was then part of Y Combinator that became huge, but he went in India, and did it back. I'm someone who's come here, wants to study here, maybe do something here. Is that something that Y Combinator supports as well?
Yes, absolutely. So we haven't sort of too publicly talked about this, but we are sort of beta testing or piloting an O1 program for our founders. But and we'll share more as we can. But generally, we have funded a lot of founders who come from outside the U.S. Some of our most successful founders, have gotten O1s or other types of visas. So I wouldn't let that stop you from applying or from starting your own company here. And then I think it's about 30% of the companies we fund generally are from outside the U.S. So I would definitely, if that's something you're interested in, I definitely go for it. So I'm going to do 2 more quick pitch sort of feedbacks, and then I'll just go to general Q&A. So
Thank you so much. You
Yeah,
have a good
that's
day.
great. All right. Javier.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi. Good to meet you.
Same. So basically, my name is Javier Bracho. I'm a non-binary student at my college. I love programming. I started as a self-taught programmer. And one of the things I really enjoy is building games, building projects, like going to hackathons. I went to Shell Hacks, the biggest hackathon in Florida, the state where I am, and I got to win the AI challenge, which was really cool. But more importantly, talking about the problems and the things I want to solve is helping students build the tools and knowledge, specifically college students. So not only can they succeed in their interviews and internships, but have the capabilities to continue building on those experiences and basically help students be able to, because I see a lot of students, the problem to me is that a lot of students just go to their classes and learn the theory, but they lack the spaces to start applying that theory. And I sort of want to help them, specifically, like, comes to my mind, GitHub, open source projects, non-profits, all of these spaces where you have senior developers, engineers, people that already have multiple years in their careers. And I want to help students have the tools and knowledge in order to contribute and interact with these whatsoever opportunities and experiences that are out there, but they just need the tools and experiences to, be able to engage with them. Because if you don't know that much, it can be very overwhelming to, like, go to like this nonprofit and be like, hey, I want to help you, or that's my pitch.
So you, if I'm hearing this correctly, you want to help students who are more or less just learning theory and going to class and learn and help them apply the theory and actually sort of learn to code and put it into practice in
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do, because I'm also a e-board member at NET, a student organization at school. But it's what I'm trying to do.
Are you interested in joining an organization that does this, or are you interested in starting your own?
I'd say both, to be honest. Both sound really good. Like, I'm kind of already part of NET, but that's more of a, student club. Now, if there's like a company that has, more resources or like bigger programs, I think AI is like a huge thing. And if we can like help use AI to help students apply these projects better, or like build themselves better, specifically like resumes and how to like interact with these projects, I think that'd be great, to be honest.
I love that. I mean, I think it's like that's certainly something you could apply to YC with, right? If you wanted to start your own company or even nonprofit, YC does fund nonprofits as well. And I would say, that's something I think you could do on a small scale while you're still in school, or build your own prototype. You have a perfect audience of people here and at your school to sort of get your first users and to get feedback and figure out what are their actual problems and like how to solve them and be really specific about that. And so, yeah, I think that this is, I think it's a strong pitch. The way you could make it stronger is have a specific ask, like I would love to join, or I would love to intern or get a job at a nonprofit or company that is already doing this, or if you want to start your own, that's totally baller and an awesome thing to want to do. And so, and then I think, the questions would be like, what do you think are the best next steps? And so that's what I would definitely recommend, like, you use the time while you're still in school to sort of do a prototype or like a pilot for what you're thinking.
Yeah, I never thought of like doing it myself. I've always been more of joining other projects, but I definitely keep it in mind. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. All right. Let's grab the next one. Thank you, Javier. Hello.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Aisha Manzabin. I'm an aspiring software engineer and web developer. I'm currently studying at the City College of Newark, majoring in computer science and in my senior year. So I love to travel, no doubt, and I love making videos. And my expertise is in developing mobile app, web applications. And currently, I'm working with one of my professors to make and my teammates to make an app to help disabled people, especially the blind people, so that whenever they scan something, any digital text or images, it will read out loud for them. So we are still in the process of like idealizing. I did the site visit today, talked with some disabled people, like how they want to see, what they want to see in the app. So yeah, currently I'm working on that.
All right. So you are working on an app to help disabled people. And can you talk a little bit more about where you're at today with it?
So today we did the site visit with my team and my professors, and we just talked some people, those who have autism and disabilities, so that we want to know that what actually they want to have in our app, like the UX design and what specific things they want to have in our app so that they can ease their day-to-day life, something like that.
That's great. And then how can, I guess the one thing that's sort of missing is like, how can we help? Yeah. How can you help as you sort of get user feedback on the app,
So
or is
yeah, yeah, thanks for the question. So we took all the information that we needed. So that bring down that they're actually looking for something, time management tasks, and especially job seeking task for them. So they want job like resume, to make resumes for themselves. So there's something that something like an app that can build a resume for that, for them, and give them job links and let them record themselves so that they can practice interviews. So that I found interesting.
that is really, I love that. And I love that you're getting down to a much more specific problem that you're going to solve for them. And I think, you know, the next steps is, you know, obviously going to be like building that prototype, getting actual user feedback. And is this something you want to continue, you know, once you graduate working on, or is this sort of, you're working on it as part of a school project?
Yeah, it's a part of a school project, but I would love to go beyond on that. If my team is with me, then we are thinking that we will take this app like more seriously, even after we finishing our project.
That's great. Yeah, that's really cool. I would, you know, love to see you guys. Look, reach out if you know you ever have questions about YC. I'd be happy to answer them. And then, uh, yeah, if you end up sort of launching this, I'm happy to share some advice there, and on how to get like first users, like whether that's, you know, on Product Hunt or Reddit, or, you know, there's a lot of different channels. You know, once you start sort of launching more broadly, and so yeah, we'd love to hear more as you continue to build. But thank you. That was,
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for your feedback.
oh, of course. All right. Happy to just take any questions that you have about startups, starting a startup, working to startup, about your you know own startup. Here is one question I'm seeing. At what point in a startup's journey do you think they are a prime candidate for Y Combinator? Okay, so we fund teams from the very earliest stages, where you might just be one, one or two founders. At YC, we love to see teams, just because if you look at our list of top companies, if you look at the list of, you know, the top 100 YC companies most successful, very few of them, I think it's only 5 or 6, were started by solo founders. So ideally, you'll be a team of 2 or 3. You'll have the technical ability to build what it is that you're pitching us. Maybe you can show a really early prototype, or give us insights on why you're solving this problem, and why you think it's the problem that you want to, you know, work on for the next potentially 10 years. But you don't have to have a ton of traction. You just have to have a team, an idea, and the ability to build it. And so I would say even that early, you can apply. And there are certainly teams that we fund who are a little bit further along. There are teams that have raised no money, teams that have raised in the low millions, teams that have not launched at all. I think about 60% of the companies we fund have not launched. So the really early stage, and teams that have a launched product and are making revenue. So everyone is pre-Series A, but I would say as early as possible, I would apply. And if you apply and you don't get in, you know, these days we're getting like 25,000 applications per batch. It's not a bad thing to be rejected. I would apply again next batch. And there is a question on the app. If you've applied before but didn't get in, what have you, you know, accomplished since then? And if you've made a lot of good progress, like you have a prototype, you've launched, you've gotten some early feedback from users. If we see you're moving quickly, you'll have a really high chance of getting an interview. So I wouldn't be afraid to apply as early as possible. And one thing I tell early stage founders is, even if you're not thinking about applying, I would definitely look at our application, because you'll get to see questions that will make you understand how investors are thinking about, ideas and startups. And then there are also questions in there that you should definitely know how to answer with your co-founder, about co-founder equity, and kind of forces you to have some interesting and hard conversations up front. So it's just ycombinator.com/apply. You can take a look at the application, whether or not you're ready to apply this minute. Okay, next question. Does Y Combinator offer some sort of networking to find other co-founders to work on a project? Yes. I'm actually going to put the link in the chat because this is one of the questions that we get most frequently, is how do you find a co-founder? And if you're still honestly, we've looked at the best teams that we funded, and the best teams usually, historically have found their co-founders at school. So you guys are in the perfect environment to find people that you might want to work with, or at work. So they've done, maybe they've worked together at a startup or another company for a couple of years and decide, they work really well together, have an aligned vision, and, start a company together. So I would, but a few years ago, someone on our team was saying, these days, a lot of people are meeting their life partners on apps, right? And so why couldn't we try to help people find co-founders online as well? And so co-founder matching is very cool because we've now funded quite a few teams whose founders met on that platform. I think last batch we had 13 companies that we funded whose, teams met that way, and they're continuing. It's still a little bit of an experiment because, we'll have to see long term if these teams stay together. But early signals say they're doing quite well. So I would definitely check it out if you're looking for co-founders. All right. Question. Do you have any advice for how to tailor your pitch for employers to show they're the best candidate? Yeah, I would say for an employer, I think a lot of employers, so we have something called Work at a Startup, and it's a common application that goes to, all the companies, all the YC companies that are hiring for certain positions. So say you're, junior software engineer, you apply there and it goes to all, say there are 3,000 companies hiring for that role. It'll go to all those founders. I would say though, if, really generally a lot of our companies do find a lot of talent on that platform. But if you are applying directly to a company, I would make sure you have in your cover letter, in whatever, you have something that is really tailored to that company so that they know you have a clear sense of what they do, and you can clearly and succinctly say this is the experience that I have. And here's how I can help. And, here's what I'm interested in learning. So it's I think it's good to tailor it as much as you can to that cover letter or that initial email, tailor it as much as possible. And as I said, in the presentation before, being really clear about who you are and what you do, and then what you want to learn. And I think that'll make it clear, okay, this is a good fit from the perspective of a learning match, I suppose. Okay, question. Let's see. For a startup that has already launched, what would make that startup stand out and could get, what would give them a chance to work with YC? Besides the idea, what does Y Combinator look for when considering investing? Okay, so at the very earliest stages, we're really looking at the team, because we know that that a lot of folks, have ideas, but then they pivot or they end up doing something slightly different. So what we're looking for is, as I mentioned, a team, ideally, 2 or more, with someone technical on the team who can build the product. And we're also looking for how quickly a team moves. I think people really underestimate that piece of it. And so, for example, if you've been working on an idea for 2 months, but you've talked to a bunch of potential users and have some really interesting insights that you can share with us, that's great. And if you have an early prototype by then, that's great too. If you've been working on a product for a year and a half and you've only made that much progress, so you only have a prototype and you have some user feedback, but you haven't launched. We wonder what's slowing you down. And of course, if you have, full-time school or a full-time job, that's totally understandable. So what I would say is like, you say like, hey, I'm, I've been working on this idea full-time for 2 months, but I've been thinking about it, for a year, but, I'm in school. So that's, so that we understand sort of the context that you're in. We look for, as I mentioned, insights. So we get 25,000 applications. A lot of them are trying to tackle the same problems. For example, in the last batch of YC, during interviews, like everyone was building something related to LLM. So it's like, I think that, it was hard to differentiate between the ideas, and a lot of the teams were very early stage. So I would say like talk to as many potential users as possible and try to get like, what are the insights that you've learned from them that will help you stand out. So I think if you're building a product that solves a problem that you've seen in your own work, in your own life, that's really helpful as well, because you have sort of an innate sense of like the problem that you're solving and can share your own insights. And I'd say, yeah, so I say those, beyond that, it's a pretty wide range, but those are, I think it's like technical ability, team. Oh, we also look for teams that have as even an equity split as possible. We want to see teams where all the founders, say there are 2 founders, you have as close to 50% split for equity, because we want to make sure you're all on the same page and that you're all ready to like, go on this journey for a decade. So those are some of the things. So I think you also asked for a startup that has launched. What would make that startup stand out? I think for that, we, obviously you have specific metrics. So it's like, we ask you, what KPI do you use? And what are their numbers? If you have user, or if you have revenue, we ask what your revenue is for the past like X number of months. If you have users, we look at like how many users, but we look at churn. We look at, how are you acquiring the users? So, is it organic, or are you paying people to try out the product? So there's a lot of different things once you have a launch product, that a lot of questions on the application that you can sort of dig into to show that you have people who, want what you're building and are coming back, or that you have like a good hypothesis for what might keep them coming back. Okay. Next question. What if we have several passions? How do we pick one to invest in over the others? Oh my God, this is like, this is the eternal question I have. So I think, you're still in school, or probably still in school. And I think being in school, like I wish I had spent more time doing internships in different sort of industries or different verticals to truly understand, because like what direction, one should go in. Because I have the same challenge. I've always had a wide range of interests and passions. And so I think give yourself the time while you're in school to explore those different, directions. And I really like Sam Altman's framework that I shared, where, thinking about, what are you good at, the intersection of what you're good at, what you love doing, and what people will pay for. Because, there may be some things we have passions for that are harder to get jobs in, or harder to sort of, go in that direction. So if you can be sort of honest with yourself about those 3 things, it might be easier to sort of give yourself some direction. Okay. Am I able to share slides with the attendees? Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to share, I will ask the CodePath folks the best way to do that. But, I'm also happy to email you if you want. I can send them to you. If there's a way for me to do it through this platform, CodePath, just let me know. All right. I'm gonna grab your email real quick so I can email that to you. Okay. There's another question. For first-generation aspiring entrepreneurs, does Y Combinator offer any resources and opportunities to come up with an effective idea, refine the idea, and how to start working on that? Yes. So we have a free online course called Startup School. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's called startupschool.org. And it's it started, we had a couple sessions or, a few sessions of it where it was like essentially a 10-week online course where a lot of our partners and executives and founders did talks about different topics. And one topic that was discussed, I'm going to put it in the chat, was how to get startup ideas. And so we do have online resources. Here, I'm also going to link to the library. Online resources to help you sort of think through some of these questions and like frameworks for thinking about how to work on something, or what you should work on. So I would recommend checking those out if you're in the very earliest stages. I will also say something that our group partners are really good at. And so just to kind of give you a little background, YC split into 4 houses, essentially. Like we've been called, compared to Hogwarts, but it's like there are 4 groups or like 4 houses. And in each of those groups, there are 2 group partners and 2 full-time group partners and usually 2 visiting group partners that are YC alumni. Like Emma Cheer of Twitch, for example, is one of our visiting partners, but they work very closely with you. They're all like, former CEOs and founders themselves. And some of our longtime group partners have seen thousands of companies go through YC. So for companies where, they think have very promising founders, but weak ideas, the group partners at this point are really good with sitting down with you and at the beginning of the batch and trying to figure out, is this the right idea? And they call it the idea maze. They'll walk through the idea maze with you and they'll try to find something at the intersection of like essentially, what you're good at and what what you have in your background and what people will pay for. And they'll try to help you pivot into something that makes sense. And they've done that for so many companies now successfully. So it's also something that we do at YC, like once you're in the program even. All right. Question. If you're looking to work at an early stage startup, would you recommend doing an internship at a tech company or focusing on a side project to show ability? Oh, I would say, I think a side project is enough, honestly. I think, I don't think you'd have to like get a job at a large tech company to prove that your ability there. So I would say, if one reason I would say like to work at, if you're an intern, if you're in college, to work at both a startup at one point and at a big company at one point is just to figure out which one calls to you. Startup life is it's fast paced. You have to learn a lot on the fly. There's less structure. If, I would say if you're not sure which, a big company or a startup appeals to you, interning is the best way to figure that out. But yeah, I would say, if you're looking to work at an early stage startup, don't worry about getting a job at a big company first. Like, I don't know that as many of those skills are applicable to an early stage startup as like a side project would be. I think a side project shows like initiative and that you can build and those are the most important aspects for folks looking for folks to join their early stage startup. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to ask me a question, I'm Kat at ycombinator.com. I'm going to try to grab as many of these emails as I see in the chat to share the slides. But if I miss anyone, feel free to shoot me an email and I can send the slides your way. And thank you guys so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. I don't know. Here, let me see if there's a way to grab everything in the chat. But thank you again so much. And I'm really excited to see some of you apply to YC. Those of you that are already working on companies, and if you ever have any questions, please reach out.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to Kat for an amazing session. She's not going to need to copy and paste all the emails. Over to you. If you don't mind dropping your appreciation in the chat for Kat as a reminder, she is also hosting tomorrow afternoon an expert Ask Me Anything on all things startups. That will be on the main stage. You can see that information in the schedule. We really encourage you to attend that session if you'd like to connect more with Kat for further conversation. Big shout out to everybody who came up on stage and did their pitch. Very brave, loved it. So thank you so much for that. As you're dropping your appreciation in the chat, know that you can visit Kat potentially in the booth if she's there during networking breaks, but also again attending her session tomorrow. I am going to drop our feedback survey in the chat. Really appreciate you just taking a moment or two. It's 3 questions. Just give your feedback on the session. Next up, you can go back to the main stage and find your next session that you would like to attend. We have a ton of great content all day. And so to close this out, we're going to go to a brief video from our host, Bobby D, and we are excited to see you all in a session soon. And thank you again so much, Kat, for hosting and for sharing all your advice for students. Really, really awesome. And thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in your next session soon.
Now we're moving on into the networking session. This is an opportunity for you to network not just with your peers, but also with companies. But let me give you some information so you know what you're doing when you get over there. It says that you can access the networking lounge or visit the company's booth. This is a great time to connect with companies and each other. So we encourage you to go visit the spaces and build connections. Guess what? You might run into me out there again. If you haven't already, we'll be chatting soon. Enjoy the networking session.